Oh no, Caesar! Mercy on his soul, he didn't have to go that way. Oh my gosh, had he just listened to Calpurnia, she warned of the dreams, the blood of the capital. No, no, oh, please don't say it so. Oh God. And the award for the Best Actress is Miss Miller. Well, thank you. I'd like to thank all of my fans. I worked very hard for this role. Um, Listen, we are all disappointed and pretty saddened by the news that Julius Caesar has finally faced his death. And he really sort of embodies this idea of what we're going to discuss today, which is the tragic hero. And we're really going to focus on Julius Caesar, Shakespeare's work. And one of the first things you should know as we look into tragic heroes is that it comes in many forms. It doesn't all show up as in a human life. So it could be, you might read a work or a play or a novel, and the tragic hero could be a god. So it may come as a god, right? It may be Zeus, Adonis. It may be a demigod, like Hercules, like half mortal, half god. It could be a high-ranking official like our guy Julius Caesar, or it could be a hero. It could be the Great Gatsby. It could be the character from Death of a Salesman. So it could be any of these forms for a tragic hero. The origin of a tragic hero, what creates this tragic hero, is they may have just simply may have bad character, right? We might be reading about someone that is just not a good person, just not a good individual, not a nice character in the story. And so that may lead to them being a tragic hero. Or in our case with Julius Caesar, he may just have really poor judgment. He can't make the right decision. It also could be that they have an inherited weakness, perhaps like in Oedipus, right? They have this inherited weakness where he has this Achilles heel. It could be that. Or a defect of the character. Perhaps there's something lacking in the person, or they are physically weak. So all of these, it could be one or several. So here's what happens. They have this upward climb. The individual, they rise to a high position. Maybe it's a position of wealth or it's a status. If you think of the Great Gatsby, we have Gatsby who rises to wealth, right? And then we have this intervention, something that gets in the way. It's their pride. In our case, Julius Caesar, he's too prideful, right? And we'll talk about later the different forms of pride and what it looks like in literature. Or they become too greedy, like in Gatsby perhaps, or his ambition, or with Oedipus would be their fate, right? And in the text, we have this idea of it's foreshadowing. So we all know what's going to happen, right? If we're watching a movie, we hear the sounds and we know, oh no, someone's going to die. But when we're reading the text, we can also sense that something is going to happen. There are clues throughout. And in our case with Julius Caesar, there's discussions of it quite frequently behind closed doors between the conspirators regarding Julius Caesar. I mean, it happens from the beginning of the text all the way to the end. They sort of build up. There's this hatred for Julius Caesar, and then they start to plot against him, and then they decide on what to, and how to carry this out. So again, for the tragic hero, they have this upward climb, and then obviously what goes up must come down. So the status is obviously short-lived, right? Gatsby doesn't have the wealth for much longer. He dies. We think about the death of a salesman. He worked so hard his whole life, and then he's gone. And then we think about Julius Caesar. He may be crowned, but that doesn't last very long, right? And oftentimes this decline, it can happen in the middle or the end of the text. It could happen at the beginning, but most often, like in our case with Julius Caesar, it happens right smack in the middle, right at Act 3, within a few pages, he dies. Or at the end of the text, with the Great Gatsby or even Death of a Salesman, the characters both die at the end. And so with the Elizabethan period, the idea is that this is just a complete waste of human potential. when they have these tragic heroes. It ends in, and all of these letters you probably noticed or recognize starts with D, ends in destruction, desolation. It's disastrous. There's sort of defeat. There's a defect. There's a death. And, quite frankly, it's disappointing. Disappointing in how quickly the individual dies. And it can be sometimes a letdown, right? And then we just watch this tragic hero self-destruct. And then there's this just huge, and before they self-destruct, there's this catastrophe. And this is just what happens. So not only, some of you think, why are we reading this? What's the point? Well, we have tragic heroes in our own lives. You may even be outside and you have your own circle of friends, but you have one who is really boastful and overly confident, and maybe they just earned the scholarship to go somewhere. And it's like, before you know it, they lose it because there's a flaw somehow in their character of who they are, or even it could be a flaw, an inherent weakness, whatever it is. But oftentimes it's inevitable. So sometimes you just stand back and you're silent and you just watch things happen right before your own eyes. And it's pretty sad. So here are the cyclical effects. There's the sentiments of the reader. So we are experiencing this with the tragic hero as we're reading about them, and so we pity them, we have terror for them, we have fear for them, right? And then the turmoil of the hero, well, it's their suffering, right? A change in fortune from happiness. So all of a sudden they are, 1 minute they're super happy and they're on cloud nine, and then they go to experiencing like extreme misery. And something happens. If they don't die, they're miserable. And then we see even in Julius Caesar, he says, "Et tu, Brutus," right? So it's like, oh my gosh, and all from one poor choice. One poor choice. Julius Caesar, do you want to go to the Capitol or not? I think you could have waited a day. You could have delayed that. You could have just listened to Calpurnia. Right? Just one choice made all the difference. And that's oftentimes how life is too. So, and it's just so tragic for us to watch. Even in The Great Gatsby, one poor choice. He's chasing after Daisy. Like, you just don't have to do that. There are other girls out there, right? But we just couldn't let it go. So those are the cyclical effects for both the reader and also the hero. And then we have this tragic flaw, and it's entitled Hamertia, which is just an error in judgment. And you never want to go with what's called hubris pride. I always refer when someone seems like they're just getting too caught up and they're getting too high on their horse. They exude this hubris pride, the disregard of a divine warning, which is exactly what happened to Julius Caesar. Right? Calpurnia had it in the dreams. Don't do it. Don't go. Don't go. And at first he was complicit and decided, okay, I'll go. And then he decided, no, you know what? I don't want to look crazy. I'm going to go ahead and go. And he thought nothing could happen to him. He felt like he was invincible. So he has this hubris pride. And so ultimately it was a tragic flaw because of error in his judgment. And then lastly, we have this catastrophe. And so we start with a complication. We know that there's a problem. And then we refer to it as the nagnarus, which is a discovery of facts unknown to the hero. Everybody around him knows, everybody around Julius Caesar knows that he's going to die, that this isn't going to end well, right, for him, except him. And this isn't always the case, but oftentimes with a tragic hero, it is. And then we have Perpetua, which is a reverse in fortune from happiness to disaster. So this is exactly what happened with Julius Caesar. We don't know. We don't really hear very much about Julius Caesar. We don't really know if he's happy. But we know that there are people who really love him, and then there are people who hate him. Just like there are some people who love and adore you, and then there are some people who despise you, right? So that's just life. And so literature is very much like that. But essentially, we just discussed a tragic hero, what it looks like in Julius Caesar's piece, and the origin of it, and what the effects are, and what it looks like when they go up, they must come down. So those are the components of a tragic hero in any work, whether a play, a novel, prose, it doesn't matter. Hope that was helpful.